All right, here we go. So polynomials and their functions. The first thing we're going to talk about is a monomial. Do you know what mono typically means? Singular, one, monomial. So a monomial is a single term. Now that can be a number, it can be a variable, or it can be the product. What's a product? Multiplication. So you can multiply a number and a variable and get a monomial. So this is kind of your standard version of a monomial, a times x to the nth power. As long as n is a counting number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 0, not, well, it could be 0, not a negative, okay? The degree of a monomial is the exponent of the variable. So this n, okay, that's your degree. But here's the thing that can get a little bit confusing sometimes. If there is no variable, your degree is 0. What's a variable? X, Y, Z, A, G, a letter, right? It's a placeholder. So if there is no variable, the degree of that monomial is 0, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna give you 5 monomials and you're gonna tell me the degree of them. What's the degree of the number 7? 0. There's no variable, right? It's essentially x to the 0 power because anything to the 0 power is, anybody?
0.
1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So basically we're saying 7 times 1 if you need to think of it that way, okay? That means our degree for this one is 0. What's the degree of 3x? 1. This is x to the first power. So that's got a degree of 1. Negative 10x to the 6th. 6 is your degree. 1/3 x squared. 2. Okay. 5 to the 4th.
0.
Good job, Sean. Oh, he's so fast. I was waiting for someone to say 4 because a lot of you wanted to say 4, didn't you? It's a trick question. This is a degree of 0. There is no variable taken to a power. It's a number taken to a power. I don't even know what 5 to the 4th power is. Anybody off the top of your head know 5 to the 4th power?
625.
6. Good job. 625, right? So this is essentially the number 625. That's a power, or a degree, rather, of 0. Okay? Okay, things that are not monomials. Can't be a fraction. Oops. Well, that works too, I guess. It cannot have that fraction set up. That is not a monomial. Okay, it says the product of two things, not the quotient of two things. Can't have a negative exponent, and you cannot have a radical with it. Okay, those are not monomials.
So in the last one we just did, how can 1/3 of x squared be a monomial? Because that's x squared.
Okay, so it can't be that your variable is in the denominator. Yes, technically that would be a quotient if you had the variable in the denominator. You can think of, yes, okay, I said that poorly. You're correct. You can't have the variable in the denominator or like x squared, x to the 5th, none of that in the denominator to be a monomial. Okay. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Any other questions on those? Okay, polynomial. What does poly mean? Multiple, many, right? Poly is many. Polynomial. Instead of a monomial, now polynomial. Now here's the thing. It's kind of a misnomer at times because a monomial is a polynomial, but it doesn't have to be a monomial to be a polynomial. So it can be one term or the sum or difference of several monomials to be a polynomial. Okay, so technically this 3x is a polynomial. Yes, it's a monomial, but a monomial is technically considered a polynomial still, okay? But we would not say that 2x plus 3 is a monomial, right? That's not one term. That's two terms that we're adding together. So that is a polynomial. How it works with polynomials and degrees is the degree is the largest exponent of any of your monomials. So if you take all of your monomials and you look at their exponents, the biggest one, the biggest power is your degree of that. So if you look at 2x plus 3, what is the degree of that polynomial? 1. 2x to the first power. 3 does not have a degree. It's a degree of 0. So your degree for that polynomial is 1. What's the degree of 9x to the 5th minus 3x plus 1?
6.
It's 5. Yeah, you're not going to add them together. It's the largest that you see in the setup. The largest monomial degree is the degree of your polynomial. So this is 5. It is tempting to say 6 because this is x to the first, and you think, oh, let's add them together. We don't add them together, okay? So don't use that guy, just the 5. What's the degree of that last one?
4.
That one would be 4. Your largest exponent is 4. So that's a degree of 4, okay? Okay, so standard form for these is just like any other standard form we've ever done. You need to put your exponents in descending order. So start with the highest one, work your way down until you get to potentially no exponent at all. The leading coefficient is the number in front of the first variable when it's in standard form. Okay, the leading coefficient has to be out in the front of the whole thing. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put this x to the third minus 10 plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 7x to the fourth in standard form. What comes first? No. Greatest to least, descending. Negative 7x to the fourth. Yep, so that'll be your first one. Negative 7x to the fourth. Then what?
8x cubed.
Plus x cubed. Yep, plus x cubed. Then what?
8x squared.
Plus 8x squared. Then plus 5x. And last, minus 10. Okay, so you're keeping the sign in front of your number, right? So what is the leading coefficient?
-7.
Siri think I'm talking to her? -7 would be your leading coefficient. The first term in standard form, you take the number in front of the variable. So your leading coefficient is a -7. Questions on that? Okay, the reason we talk about leading coefficient, we don't really do anything with it, but I'm just like, don't even write this down. I don't make you do this, but I just want you to understand that that leading coefficient does play in. You'll learn more about this in future classes. Advanced math, you'll do more of this stuff, but I just want you to get a grasp of it. The leading coefficient being positive versus negative does something, and being even versus odd does something too, if you were to graph it. So when, I'm gonna write it over here. You don't need to know this. I just want you to understand a little bit. If your leading coefficient is even versus odd, okay? If it is even, and it's a positive number, what happens is your graph opens up, but it's something kind of like this, kind of makes a W. If it's an even number and it's a negative, that flips over. It goes down, but kind of gives this bumpy setup. W versus M. But it's also about your exponent. So it doesn't have to be a W or an M, but they'll both open up or they'll both open down, okay? If your leading coefficient is odd, and it's a positive versus a negative, okay? If it's positive, now they're not gonna both open the same direction, but it will be on its way up, kind of like that. If it's an odd number that's negative, it would be on its way down. And again, the number of humps is dependent on what your exponent is that you're working with. I don't make you do anything with that, but I just thought it's kind of interesting to see how those are affected. So just FYI, fun fact for you, if you will. Okay, here we go. So we are going to classify our polynomials by degree and by the number of terms that we have. And some of these are going to be real familiar to you and other ones are not. If I have a polynomial with a degree of 0, so let me just give you an example. The number 10 is a polynomial with a degree of 0. Do you remember what we call that? When I say it, you're going to know it, but maybe it's hard to come up with. That's a constant, right? A number that doesn't have the variable with it, we call that a constant. Okay? If it has a degree of 1, like x plus 2, if I were to graph x plus 2, what is that? If I graphed y equals x plus 2, what am I going to get from that? It's a parabola? No, it's a line, right? So if it's a degree of 1, we say that's linear. Okay, something like 2x minus 5, right, is a degree of 1, or x plus 2 is a degree of 1. If it's a degree of 2, so like negative 3x squared plus 1, let's say, what's that? What shape is that graph? When it has an x squared, it's a parabola. That's a quadratic. Right? We've done a lot with quadratics this year. That's a quadratic. A degree, oh, I made myself bleed. Hold on. Take to scab. A degree of 3 is called a cubic. So that would be like 5x cubed plus 2x plus x minus 3, right? That has a degree of 3. My biggest, x squared. My biggest exponent is the 3, so that's cubic. Okay, and then 4 and 5 are probably new to you. Yes, good job. Quartic is like 7x to the 4th plus 3x. That would be a quartic. And then quintic, you say it kind of funny, quintic, is 5. And that would be like negative 10x to the 5th plus 3x squared minus x, for instance. Okay, notice you don't need every exponent. You don't need 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 for it to be quintic. This is quintic, and it's got a 5 and a 2 and a 1. Okay, it's just whatever your biggest exponent is. Okay, so that's if you classify them by degree. If you classify them by the number of terms that you have, what is one term? It was the very first thing I told you in this lesson. If it has one term, we call it a monomial. So one term is a monomial. That could be like 5x cubed, right? That's one term. What if it has two terms? Like this. X plus 2 has two terms. What do we call that? You know this. A binomial, right? We often see it like that. That is a binomial. So like 7x to the 5th plus 3. Okay. What if it has three terms? You know this too. It's a trinomial. Okay, so a trinomial, as an example, might be x squared minus x minus 6. And then 4 or more, they don't get any fancier names or anything. They just say those are polynomials, which technically 1, 2, and 3 are polynomials also, right? But we can be more specific, monomial, binomial, trinomial. But anything 4 or beyond is just polynomial. So that would be like x to the 3rd plus x squared plus x plus 1 would be a polynomial. Okay? Okay, so last thing. Yes, Chris. You good? Okay. Last thing then for this first lesson is this. We are going to look at this chart and we're going to fill it in for all the different things that we've talked about. Okay? So this first one, we have 17x, and I want to know the standard form, the leading coefficient, the degree, the name by degree, and the name by the number of terms we have. Okay? Do you want to try and fill this out on your own first?
Yes. No. You're all cowards.
harsh. I kind of want you to try. Just 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. Try to fill it in on your... What is standard form of 17x? 17x. Look at that. What's the leading coefficient? 17. What's your degree? 1, right? That's x to the first power, technically. You're not going to see the 1, but it is to the first power. So the name of this by degree would be what?
Linear.
This is linear. It's x to the first power, right? So a degree of 1 is linear. You would get a straight line if you graphed y equals 17x. And then the number of terms, we would call this a monomial. Good. Okay. Second one. What is standard form of that?
Three x cubed plus x cubed plus 5.
You're in the right order now. What is 3x cubed plus x cubed?
4x cubed.
4x cubed. So if you can simplify, you simplify, right? 1x cubed plus 3x cubed is 4x cubed plus 5. What is the leading coefficient in 4x cubed plus 5? That's a 4, right? The number in front of your biggest exponent and variable. So that's a 4. What's the degree of the polynomial? 3. Okay, so the name based on the degree,
Cubic.
right? If you look up here, a degree of 3 is a cubic. And the name based on the number of terms.
Trinomial.
Polynomial.
This one's tricky. It starts as a trinomial, right? But standard form, it's a binomial. Tricky, tricky. All right, third one here. What is your standard form?
Negative 3x to the 5th power minus 5x cubed plus 2.
Negative 3x to the 5th minus 5x cubed plus 2. So descending order. What's the leading coefficient? That negative 3 out in front. What's the degree? 5. And 5, the name that you give for 5 is kintic. And the name based on the number of terms we have, that's a trinomial. There are 3 terms there, so that's a trinomial. Okay, now we get fancy. I maybe should have given you a little more room in your notes here to work this out. I'm going to do it over here. What do we need to do with this? What? Combine like terms. First, we need to do some FOILing, right? If you know what x plus 2 squared is as a trinomial, you can just simplify that way. But if you don't, just set it up, x plus 2 times x plus 2. Remember, x plus 2 squared is not x squared plus 4, right? You have to FOIL that. Minus x minus 2 times x plus 6. We're going to FOIL both of these. So it's x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. So x, hold please. Try that again. X squared plus 4x plus 4 is our left side. And we are subtracting from that, FOIL this, x squared plus 6x minus 2x minus 12. So we're subtracting x squared plus 4x minus 12, but we're subtracting the whole thing, right? We're subtracting those 2 sets of binomials. So make sure that minus gets distributed to everything. What do you get? $16, right? That whole thing turns out to be 16 because you have x squared minus x squared is 0, 4x minus 4x is 0. And then 4 minus a negative 12 is 16. Isn't that fantastic? I love it when math does that. Okay, so that's 16, which means the leading coefficient, 16. There's not technically anything to lead, but you can just say 16 there. What's the degree? 0. The name by the degree is constant. And this is a monomial. Okay. Okay, last one. Simplify this. This one you don't really have to rewrite. X cubed minus x cubed goes away. That's 0. 2x, over here you have an x squared. Oh, here's where you have to be a little bit careful. What's coming first? Not x squared. Negative x squared, right? Because it's minus x squared. So a negative x squared. Then we have a positive 2x. And then it's 4 minus 4. So that's 0. So you just get negative x squared plus 2x. Okay, what's your leading coefficient? Negative 1. What's your degree? 2. And that is a quadratic, yes. Because it's got the squared, right, as your highest exponent. And it is also a binomial. Such a pretty chart. Yeah. So you had plus 2x here, but there's no x on this side. Just x by itself, right? So plus 2x goes here. No, the x squared is separate. That one is here. So that's minus x squared, right? So you have a negative x squared, and then you have a positive 2x, but there's no x on the other side to add or subtract with. So it's just 2x, okay? Questions on that?